Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another live stream. Hope you guys are ready to rock and roll. Welcome back to another show. You already know how we do here during the live streams. Gonna give it a few minutes, before we start, so that way, gonna make sure everybody gets their notifications and everybody, is able to join us in time before we really get into the nitty gritty as to what we're going to be talking about today. And again, if you guys read the description a little bit, you guys know we're going to be talking about safety. We're going to be talking about safety issues out here in Mexico. Something that actually happened to me this past weekend that, well, I just have to share with you guys. Something that, it's again pertains to the show. This is why I'm doing today's live stream talking about this particular subject, because something actually happened to me this weekend where I was in danger. Thank God everything worked out, and here I am to tell you guys all about it. And as you guys already know, many times when we start a show, you guys might have an idea as to what we're going to be talking about, and then before you know it, just like a Simpsons episode, it turns out to be something completely different. So we're going to play it by ear today. And again, for anyone out there that has any kind of questions or comments or what have you, please, again, we're live. You can join us in the chat, and you guys can for sure again, share your 2 cents or your 5 cents or how many cents you got. I got no sense. So we got Lambo over here took all my sense, but regardless, at the end of the day, we're here to share, and talk about, our own personal experiences out here living in Mexico, or before we moved up to Mexico. So again, please let me know if the music is too loud, if you guys can hear me okay. I got some images in the background that I've shown many times before, just kind of like a greatest hits, best hits of my life out here. I filmed this a few years ago, and this is basically a lot of footage that I started, filming from the minute that I got here over 7.5 years ago. And then again, in over 7 years that I've been here, what happened to me this past Saturday only happened to me one other time out here in Mexico, and it was a long time. Again, it's been a while since this happened to me, and sure enough, it happened again on Saturday, and here we are to talk about it. So, all right, okay, thank you for letting me know about the music. Gonna bring that down a little bit. Anyways, but so yeah, guys, so what are we going to talk about today? So today's live stream is to talk about the real dangers that us foreigners face when we are in Mexico. Because the reality is that, well, there's danger everywhere. We just cannot, get away from it. Unfortunately, it is what it is. It's a part of life. And for a lot of people, they have a lot of misconceptions as to what the dangers, in Mexico are, or what the dangers are outside of your home country. Again, in your home country, wherever you're at, might be the USA or Canada or Europe. But most of you guys are watching or listening from the USA or Canada. And for many of you guys out there, you guys know fully well that where you're coming from is extremely dangerous, especially if you're coming from the USA these days. I see Sammy in the chat saying hello from Knoxville, Tennessee. From my understanding, Tennessee is one of those places is actually pretty dangerous these days. A lot of places in the USA are very dangerous. And so immediately when most of us, most Americans, think of danger, we're automatically, thinking of the same kind of danger that we would have in the USA. And, what kind of danger do we face in the USA daily these days? Well, again, gun violence, just general violence from, random people, whether it's a police officer, some random dude on the street, some random dude living on the street, some guy that had a bad day and is now with them, some road rage, whatever. All right. You guys know the dangers in the USA are at every corner. And so you're always hearing of all these dangers of traveling abroad, to going into another country. You always hear the dangers of Mexico, as to Mexico being extremely dangerous. Whether, again, the normal violence that you already are used to in the USA, or again, the cartels. Careful, the cartel violence. They're going to come after you, and you already know they're going to take your social security check or what have you.
Bruh.
So, with that said, the reality is that after living out here for over 7 years, I have realized that there's no danger out here compared to the USA. Of course, there's danger. There's tons of dangers. I don't want to, go out there and, start telling you guys out there that there is no danger of being abroad, of living in Mexico or what have you. Of course there are. You got to use your situational awareness. You got to, again, use your common sense. A lot of things that we've talked about countless times here on the show. But at the end of the day, the longer that you're here in Mexico, again, if you've never been to Mexico, you will be in for a pleasant surprise. But for some of you guys out there that have traveled to Mexico, have been to Mexico multiple times, or even been abroad, just any other country out there, you realize that a lot of the dangers that they tell us about, well, they're a little bit overblown, and it's not really as dangerous as they tell it to us, as they let us, they lead us to believe. In fact, many of us, quickly realize that our own countries, again, our own country of the USA is actually the most dangerous. We are, in a war zone out in the USA in many instances, in many cases, all the time. And so, obviously, when you are in, before you even travel to Mexico, or you travel anywhere, but, we're talking about Mexico in this instance, a lot of you guys are just, well, scared, for obvious reasons. I myself was also very scared before I ever stepped foot in Mexico. I remember the first time I went to Tijuana, to just visit, before I ever moved out here to Mexico, and I was on pins and needles, just waiting for danger, to just pop out of whatever random corner, only to quickly realize, oh, wait a minute. This is fine. There's no real danger out here. There's more danger in Los Angeles, at the moment than there was in Tijuana. Um, Again, it all depends on where you go. Obviously, some neighborhoods in some areas are a lot more dangerous than others. But the reality is that compared to the USA these days, there's really not that much danger out here. In fact, it is actually pretty safe. Now, granted, I live in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico, which is considered the safest city in Mexico and the second safest city in all of the Americas. Now, again, with my own travels around Mexico, I've realized that there are many places that are pretty safe as well. Yes, Merida, where I live, kind of takes the cake. It is pretty safe out here. Obviously, we do have petty crime and, little things here and there that happen just like any other major city around the world. But at the end of the day, it is extremely safe. I remember when I traveled to Mexico City, Guadalajara, and other places, again, even Tijuana, and I was always warned about how dangerous it is and what to be, again, looking out for. And, most of the time, it was always just, hey, be careful. They can steal your phone. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that can happen in Los Angeles. That can happen in Miami. That can happen wherever. It's like, careful, you might get mugged. I'm like, oh, okay. Is someone going to shoot me? Am I going to get shot, for my wallet? No, 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 no. That's never going to happen here. Don't worry about that. But, be careful. Someone could pull out a knife and take out your gun. I mean, take your wallet. I'm like, okay, but no guns, right? No guns out here. No, no, no. Don't worry about it. It's not like that. So again, as I've interacted in Mexico and interacted with more and more people, and I've traveled around, I've realized that, oh, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Like, this is not even anywhere remotely close to as dangerous as it is for us in the USA. Now, granted, if you are a Mexican living in Mexico, of course, there's going to be a bit more danger for you, having to deal with a lot of the everyday living situations out here, and again, even having to deal with those bad hombres out there. But for the most part, anyone else that's a foreigner, an American, a Canadian, European, whatever it is, yeah, you are not a target. You are not anywhere even on their radar. The last thing they want to do is mess with you, as I've mentioned multiple times before, especially these days. You already know the U.S. government is looking for absolutely any excuse, okay, for them to come to Mexico and spread some freedom. So trust me, the bad guys out there, they know that fully well, and they are under direct orders to again leave us alone even more than they usually do. So just to kind of put that to the side. Now, what exactly happened to me? Now what happened to me this past weekend that prompted me to do this show? What is so dangerous about living out here in Merida or living in Mexico that I had to do a live stream to talk about this? So, mm, well, since we're already about 10 minutes in, might as well let you guys know what happened. So, actually, on Saturday, what happened was that, drum roll. I okay, here, I got a drum roll here. Hold on. One second.
Bruh.
Okay. I wiped out on my bicycle, on my electric bike. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. All right. So I actually wiped out, on my bicycle, and yeah, it kind of sucked. It did not end well. I mean, it ended it really well. Again, I'm here. We're chatting. We're talking. I'm alive. Thank God. Knock on wood, right? Mm. But I had a really, really nasty spill on my bike. And unfortunately for you guys, I was not recording. Oh my gosh, I know. That to me, if anything, was what hurt the most. The fact that I was not recording when I crashed. Yes, road rash, 100%. So in fact, all over my arm, all over my shoulder. We're gonna get to the story in a second, since I know you guys are very interested in that. But again, not just talk about the story and talk about what happened to me, but again, we're going to talk about other dangers. Okay, besides the obvious dangers of what they tell you guys out there all the time, which is be careful when you're on the road. When you always hear be careful when you're on the road, everyone always assumes, oh my gosh, the cartels are hiding behind the corner. They're going to pull me over. They're going to take my stuff. They're going to no. When people tell you to be careful when you're on the road, they mean because the roads suck many times. Not always, sometimes they're good. You guys see it in my videos. But sometimes the roads suck. They're uneven. There's potholes. There's animals. There's bad drivers. There's a lot of, there might be garbage. There's all kinds of, things on the road, all kinds of items, things, what have you, that could cause you to have an accident. Whether you are walking, on your bicycle, in a car, or whatever mode of transportation you're using, it happens all the time. It is a very frequent thing out here. In fact, a bit more frequent than I would like to admit, or a lot of Mexicans would like to admit, but it's just the truth. It is what it is. And so, obviously, a lot of it has to do with, just the fact that the roads are not taken care of. But in my case, that was just part of the problem. Okay. So I'll tell you what happened. So what happened was that, like, on Saturday afternoon, um, I had one of you guys out there, which will remain nameless. You guys were visiting out here with your family, and you guys reach out to me because you guys wanted to buy some T-shirts, from Christian. Not the ones that I have on my store, but again, Christian also sells T-shirts and art and all kinds of stuff. So, anyways, long story short, you guys, one of you, some of you guys out there, purchased some shirts from Christian. So, well, you know how I do. I like to always get on the bike and always have an excuse, for me to ride around and film a video. So I went on ahead Saturday afternoon. It was getting a little cloudy out there, but not enough for me to worry about any kind of heavy rain. Also, I wasn't going too far. Remember, I live close to Ed Centro. One end of Ed Centro. I was going from one end to the other end of the Centro. And it was Saturday, so I figured, whatever, I'll be fine. It's not a big deal. So I go on ahead and I make my delivery. I go to Ed Centro. I hang out for a little bit, with you guys. Again, I don't know if you guys are watching or not, but shout out to you. You guys asked to not be named. But anyways, regardless, I was hanging out. And then when I was leaving, I started to see that the clouds started to get a little darker. But again, it wasn't raining or anything like that just yet. I wasn't really that far away from home. So I figured, all right, let me speed out of here. Let me get out of here as quickly as possible to see if I can beat the rain and hopefully I'll be all right. Well, okay, so I went on my, I said goodbye. I got on my bike and I was not filming because, well, I was just trying to get home, trying to beat the rain. So as I'm halfway to home, I already passed the downtown area, the center area, and I was close to like around Christian school, give or take. All of a sudden, it started to rain as I was approaching that area, the Parque La Plancha area. It started to rain, and I was like, well, okay, it's raining, but it's not raining hard enough. I'm okay. I really don't have anything on me, whatever. I can get a little wet. Let's just try to get home because obviously it's going to rain a lot harder. It was starting to get really dark. And again, it was already starting to get late in the day. And so I was like, all right, I got to, try to get home as soon as possible. So as I'm driving, again, I'm speeding, again, I was going a little faster than I should. I wasn't going super fast, but again, I was going a little faster than I should have been going. And then before I knew it, all of a sudden, as it happens out here in this region of Mexico, as it happens in, again, some parts of the world, but out here, the weather has a mind of its own. And so before I knew it, it was just drizzling a little bit. And within a few seconds, it was just pouring cats and dogs. And at that point, it was just pouring. It was just like a sheet of rain. I was soaking wet within a few seconds. I was like, oh no, this is not good. I can't continue driving like this, and, I have my phone out and things like that with the GPS. I was like, oh no, this is not good. I got to pull over real quick and find myself some cover, just to get out of the rain for a quick minute, at least until this passes. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it home. I was around 10 minutes away from getting home. I was like, man, oh, I missed it. But anyways, as I'm kind of processing all this information in my head, again, I'm going pretty fast. The rain started to come down even faster, and I immediately I saw like a little awning. I mean, a tiny, tiny awning. I mean, it was not big at all. Okay, like just enough to kind of like have my bike under it and for me to kind of stand up against the wall and not get too wet. But again, I was already wet at that point. I was just trying not to make it worse. So I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, all right, that's where I'm gonna go. And as I'm approaching the awning, as I'm approaching the area where I'm gonna stop, I see all of a sudden a tope, which is like a speed bump, and immediately, again, I'm going a little faster than I should be going. It's already raining really hard, so there's already water piling up. I already know where I'm gonna stop. I was again um, in a bit of a not a hurry, but again, it was I don't want to say panic because it's just rain, but you know what I'm saying? Like at that moment when you're not like, oh man, I'm gonna get really wet. I gotta run to the awning as quick. I gotta get to the awning as quickly as possible. So, anyways, I braked. I hit the brake and I hit the front brakes instead of the back brakes of the bike by mistake. I hit the front brakes. I guess I hit them too hard. I was going too fast. I hit the tope. I hit a bump. I hit something. I don't know what I hit, but long story short, I hit it and I went flying. All right. My bike went one way. I went the other way. My bag went another way. Whatever. And I just like, again, road rash. You know what I mean? Just like, I don't know if you guys remember that video game from back in the day. But yeah, long story short, I hit it full speed and I just, you know what I mean? Like Sonic the Hedgehog, with all his little coins everywhere. Bing! It's like, so anyways, I was like, as soon as I hit the ground, I was like, obviously it was like, ah, I said a few expletives, that I can't say here. And whatever, I was on the ground. Now I was really wet because I was in a puddle. Now the rain was coming down on me. I was in the middle of the street. Thank God that there was no traffic or anyone behind me. And so nothing. I picked up my bag. I made sure I had my wallet, my stuff on me, my phone, whatever. I picked up my bike and then I just walked, like an idiot, to the little awning. And so as I'm getting to the little awning, I noticed that there's somebody behind me on a motorcycle that was doing the same thing. He did not fall, but he saw me, basically fall, tumble, the whole thing, right? And so whatever, we get to the awning, and I'm there at the, under the awning, and I'm just kind of like brushing myself off. All right, and nothing's broken, everything's moving, we're good to go, yada yada yada. I see some blood. Yeah, by the way, I took pictures, but I can't show you the pictures. I checked with YouTube first, and basically said if you show the pictures, you're gonna, we're gonna ding your channel. We're gonna get in trouble. You can't be showing blood. You can't be showing whatever. So, anywho's, otherwise I would be sharing the pictures with you guys because I had them ready and set. But, anyways, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta sometimes self-censor here. But anywho's, with that being said, I noticed like a little blood, but nothing crazy. I mean, I'm a rough guy. Blood is not a thing that scares me. I used to work in kitchens, for a good majority of my life. I've seen all kinds of horrors, working behind the kitchen. So to me, obviously I fell off my bike. I was, a little blood is expected. I just could not see myself, because think about it. So, anyways, so, I just kind of noticed that. I noticed that I was a little, I had a rash, not rash, but, I just noticed that I was hurt. I was messed up. Obviously, the pain, was part of it as well. Your body is in a little bit of a shock, but at the same time, hey, you just literally spilled out, you know what I mean, and tumbled about. And I'm 44 years old. I'm not 24 anymore. So, yeah, long story short, I made it under the awning. So once I made it under the awning, this other guy approached and he was doing the same thing, parking his bike, under the awning. So it was just my bike, his bike, and then me and him. And he's just looking at me and staring at me and looking at me. And I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's up? You know what I mean? Oh, I guess the rain caught us. And he's not talking to me. He's not answering. He's just looking at me like a ghost. And I'm like, hey, how's it going, man? Or what's, why are you staring at me that way? Or am I okay? And then he just looks at me and he's like, no, 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 you're not okay. I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's wrong? And he goes, look, you got blood all over yourself, look at yourself, whatever, or he goes, and then he goes to me, he goes, are you okay? Are you all right? I saw you. He goes, then he tells me, like, yeah, I was right behind you on the motorcycle and I saw you, crash and burn and spill everywhere and all that stuff. So, obviously I was very concerned. And the way that you're looking right now, you don't look very good. So I was like, oh man, this is, as soon as he said that, my heart dropped. I started to feel a little bit, nervous because like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? Again, I've been through many things before and I know how it is sometimes. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, while the adrenaline is rushing through the body, as soon as something happens, you don't even notice. And I'm like, oh man, what could be possibly wrong that this guy is, looking at me like this? I'm like, I'm even afraid to look. That's when I started to like kind of like panic a little bit internally as I'm looking at this guy. So the first thing that came to mind is like, all right, whatever. I got my phone. I gotta let Christian know, obviously, that I'm here, caught under the rain, close by. I crashed, whatever. Let me at least take a picture of myself. Let me take a selfie of myself. Again, it's still pouring rain. My phone's wet. Everything's wet. I couldn't, it was hard to even use the phone because it was wet. I'm trying to dry it. Anyways, so I take a couple pictures. The pictures were mainly, again, just to send Christian, the I wasn't really trying to scare her or anything. But anyways, but it was really so I can look at myself, so I can see myself. Because again, I noticed that there was blood kind of coming from my head. So anyways, I look at the picture and I was like, oh, that's not good. I see like all this, basically, all this red liquid, coming from, well, this side of my head, just coming down like this. And my whole face was covered red. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. Again, this was like my first picture. I sent the pictures to Christian. I look at them and I'm like, oh no. She gets them, but as she's getting the pictures, I'm putting the phone in my pocket, because I'm trying to, I was like, all right, what do I do? Let me see if I can get some of this blood off of me or what have you. And then Christian's calling me, panicking. Oh my God, are you okay? Oh my God, did you get hit by a car? Did something happen? I talked to her like 5 minutes later, after she was panicked and let her know I was okay. So what I did there, again, I was covered in, that red liquid. So I was like, oh man, what do I do? So I went on ahead and, again, we were under the awning and it was raining, like pouring rain. And, again, it was like a little waterfall of rain, coming from the awning. So, again, I don't know if you know. Well, anyway, so my first instinct was like, well, there's water, you know, I got an injury here in my head. Let me wash it off Let me at least get all that blood off of me and then see, and then take another picture and then assess the situation and see where I'm at. So I did that. As by the way, as I'm doing this, the guy is looking at me like, bro, this guy is crazy. You know what I mean? This guy is nuts. You know what I mean? Because, at that point I had already taken my helmet off and I already took the pictures. I'm under the awning, showering in a sense, just trying to get all that off of me. And then as soon as I washed it off of me, I took another picture and I noticed that, well, I look fine. Here, I'll give you guys a closer look real quick so you guys can see. See, everything is fine. So wait, well, yeah, okay. On this, yeah, sorry, because like this thing, the thing mirrors. Okay, there it is. Yeah, I don't even know where I hit my head. So right there, I don't think you guys can see it. Hold on. Can you see it? Anyways, it turns out that my glasses, okay, basically my glasses when I fell, I mean, obviously I hit my head. Thank God that I had the helmet on. So I hit my side of my head, and my glasses basically took the hit. And when I hit the ground, the glasses hit, and they hit the side of my head. And when they hit my side of my head, that's where I got the cut, and that's why it looks so bad. But the reality is just I had like a little cut right here, all right, and a little cut up there, which I think is already gone, and then basically just road rash. Here, I'll show you guys real quick. So just road rash, all up and down. I don't know if you guys can really, probably can't tell anymore. It's mostly gone by now. It was a little bruised up. Anyways, all the way from my shoulder, all the way down, all the way up here, my hip, all the way down, whatever. All good. It's called being old. Not a big deal. But yeah, once I washed it off and I took the other picture, then I realized, oh, okay, it's not that big of a deal. By that point, I see Christians blowing up my phone and panicking, and so I was like, I pick up the phone. I'm like, yeah, and she's like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, yes, 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 I'm fine. Everything's okay. Here's the other picture. Yada yada yada. The end. And so, long story short, you know what I mean? Like, once that happened, once I washed it off, obviously the bleeding basically stopped. It wasn't that big of an injury per se. I got, like I said, just bumps and bruises more than anything else. But that initial hit, you know what I mean? Like I said, the guy that was there with me, he was paralyzed with fear. My wife was, I was, for a minute, up until I washed myself off. And, like I said, I've been through worse. This ain't this ain't nothing. But yeah, again, like as I wash myself off, and then I'm talking to the wife, and then I'm just letting her know, look, I'm where I'm at, what was going on, and then I had to wait for the rain. So okay, so I'm thinking to myself, well, it wasn't supposed to rain today. It was just a few clouds that were overhead. I can kind of still see blue clouds. You know what I mean? What's going on? Whatever. This should pass soon, but it didn't. Again, as many times, sometimes the rain passes quickly, sometimes it intensifies. So that's what was going on. It was actually intensifying and intensifying. And I was like, oh, this is not good. At that point, as I was sitting there, waiting, and it was probably like 5, 10, 15 minutes, give or take. I was at that point, the adrenaline was coming down. And I was starting to feel, again, tired, not tired, but, hurt, everything hurts. This sucks. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh man, okay. Adrenaline's out of my system. This is not good. So that means that from this point on, it's just going to have more pain and more pain. And you're still like 10 minutes away from the house. And on top of that, the rain hadn't stopped. So it started to flood a little bit, as it does, in tropical weather situations or tropical areas, where it just rains so much that it floods momentarily until the drains can catch up and take it all down. But anyways, we're in the middle of the rainy season, and this has been an extremely wet season. So I've already saw, as I was standing under the awning, and it just kept raining harder and harder, and all of a sudden the water started to creep up and go a little bit over the sidewalk. And I'm like, oh, this is not good, because obviously the longer I'm going to sit here and wait like an idiot, well, the more dangerous and the more difficult it's going to be for me to get home, because, well, now I'm all messed up. I'm in pain. I can't be, going the normal speed, whatever it is. And so like, and then on top of that, now with, the water basically covering the street, now I cannot see any potholes. Now I cannot see any speed bumps. Now I cannot see basically any road hazard. And I'm like, oh man, this is terrible. So again, as it started to flood, then within 15, 20 minutes, then the rain started to subside. Again, it did not stop raining. It was just stopped enough where I was like, okay, I can see, I'm already soaking wet. Okay, it's now or never. So, and I went on ahead. I kind of just packed up the things that I had and on me, and I got on the bike and I started to slowly make my way back home in the rain. As I was making my way back home, I realized, oh man, you know what I mean? Like this is not gonna be easy because that's when the road hazards, really, really started to, affect me. Because again, first of all, I had to go extremely slow because I was in pain. Also, I just crashed, you know what I mean? So, kind of going pretty fast. So, I was a little apprehensive, with all that. So I'm going slow, trying to get back, home. And again, as I'm going slow and I'm using the brakes, I noticed that it's starting to slip. I'm like, oh, this is not good. So I started using my feet as brakes. Obviously, my shoes got soaking wet, the whole thing. Um, Even as I was, being extremely careful with my speed and the brakes, guess what? You know what I mean? Every once in a while, I kind of going very, very slow, and then bump, bump. You know what I mean? Like my bike would just sink, because of the pothole, or I would hit something, like a speed bump or whatever it is, or a bump in the road. And I was like, man, this is just terrible. Anyways, to the point where anytime that I would see a puddle, a giant puddle, I would have to get off the bike. I would walk with the bike. Then whenever I saw regular, I could see the road. I got on the bike and then just pedaled. I had the bike turned off. I was just pedaling. And then eventually I made it home 15, 20 minutes later, slowly but surely. And it was still raining, still soaking wet. So by the time I got home, obviously I had the wife, Christian was waiting for me. Hysterical. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Glad you're okay. Everything's okay. I made it to the side door of my house here, and you know how it is. You're soaking wet. Get naked, get in the shower, and then we'll deal with you later. So that's it. I got home safely, thank God. Nothing major. I took a shower, cleaned off. I had dirt. I had road. I had everything all over the place. I had like dirt and oil and grime in my hair. All over the place. My shirt. Everything was just like a disaster. And yeah, long story short, I took a nice hot shower. Then Christian after that, then she assessed the damage. And yeah, long story short, I mean, again, just bumps and bruises all over the body. But when it came to the main injury, the injury right there, it wasn't that big. Now, granted, on Saturday it was bigger, and I was already on the fence because right before she where after I showered and stuff and I was looking at my injury, I was already thinking to myself, man, am I gonna have to go to the local hospital and get some what's puntos. Man, I can't think of the word in Spanish right now. Get some man, what's I guess it did affect my brain. I'm having brain farts right now. I'll get some stitches. There you go. Stitches. All right. But then I realized stitches is for bitches. No, sorry. Sorry.
Bruh.
No, anyways, so I mean, I already knew it. It's not the first time I've gotten stitches, but I knew the injury. You know what I mean? I saw the injury, and I'm looking at it. And I'm like, I'm kind of doing the math internally. I'm like, is this enough for stitches? The last thing I want, again, I'm already banged up, hurt. It's raining outside. It's dark already. The whole thing is like the last thing I want to do is go to the hospital just so they can tell me, oh, it's too small for us to put stitches. Here, take an aspirin. I'm like, man, so it's like it's not about the cost, all right? Because we've already talked about the healthcare cost out here, and all that stuff. And in fact, I knew exactly where to go to get my stitches because, well, the same place I got the stitches when I first moved here, when I had to break into my own house when I got locked out of the place that I was living in. Anyways, another story for another day. But yeah, long story short, you know what I mean? I kind of did the math, I did the assessment. I'm like, all right, this is not enough, for stitches. Maybe if I'm lucky, it'll be one or two, which many times I'll probably get turned away. I knew where the injury was right here. The face tends to heal a lot quicker. Again, this ain't my first rodeo, so look, I'll show you real quick. Back here, we got like a whole medical, what is it? This is where Christian comes, to come and normally I have like a thing out here, you know what I mean? Like a little patch out here, but I'm doing the live stream. I don't want to have that big thing there, to distract you guys. Also wanted to show you a little bit of the injury and stuff. But anyways, long story short, the Mexican version of like Neosporin and other things like that. So, anyways, we self-treated it, and yeah, sure enough, within a few days it was gone, closed up. I mean, not gone. I mean, closed up. Within a day or two, and I was like, all right, good executive decision and not having to go get stitches, because it just basically closed off on itself, and that's it. Yada yada yada. I've been treating it myself. I have been taking a slow week. Usually I'm very busy during the week doing all kinds of stuff, but yeah, long story short, this week I decided to rest up. Okay, so Sunday, Monday, the week for the most part I've been doing light work, a lot of computer work, but I've been kind of relaxing and chilling, just trying to recover my body. Because the first few days, oh yeah, so then after I did the assessment, before Christian started to patch me up and stuff, all over the place, my knees banged up, everything's banged up. Yeah, I went on ahead and I took some pain meds. Okay, so that's another thing that's cool about Mexico, because in Mexico, like in the USA, I have a situation like this. I can't even get really good pain meds, without a prescription, without whatever. And so out here, we just have pain meds, because whatever, the last time Christian had a toothache, or the last time that I did whatever, and the doctor gives us blah blah blah. And so, long story short, I had some muscle relaxer, not what you're thinking, just some over the counter medicine. I don't know what it's called, some Mexican medicine. And so I just took those and I was just relaxed. I relaxed, the pain subsided, and that's it. It was just bumps and bruises, that by now, what I mean? Everything is basically mostly all gone. Sure, certain parts are a little tender, they still hurt a little bit, but when it was all said and done, again, knock on wood, nothing really happened. Again, no broken bones, no major injury. Yes, I banged my head, but honestly, I think if anything, it just probably knocked some more sense into me. So all good there. And but yeah, again, thank God, thank Jeebus, thank goodness, that nothing happened. That again, it could have been so much worse. Okay, and that at the end of the day, I was able to lift myself up, and that's it. And it's funny because a lot of people were asking me as I'm telling the story, saying, oh my God, so did anybody come and rescue you? Did anybody come and help you? Did anybody? I'm like, no, who's gonna come, to save me? It was pouring rain outside. Who's hanging outside? The guy that was on the motorcycle behind me, I literally got up on my own and I made it to the awning before he did, so I was literally, washing, my injury with the dirty water, from the awning. I'm okay. I'm fine. All right. I'm a little bit, I'm a nut that's a bit hard to crack. All right. I don't know if you've heard that before. So, anyways, long story short, yeah, I mean, I made it fine. Now, again, I know that, this is not the first nor the last time something like this would happen. I've had, crash outs on my bike before. Some of you guys have seen it. In fact, I'll show you guys right here. I forgot to have it. I have it right here. I'll show you guys the last time I crashed out. Here, real quick. Hold on a second. Yeah, this is the last time I crashed out. This is okay. So this is so long ago. To the left. Okay, I'm sorry. To the right, right there. That's Parque La Plancha. This is before they even built the park. It was just an abandoned area. All right, but that's how long ago this happened. All right, so I was just on my regular bike. Okay, and I tripped over. Well, you're gonna see there. All right, here I'll show you. Hold on a second. Got a truck behind me. Oh, fuck! Yeah. No. Anyway, that was the last time that happened. No. All right, see, I got right back up. Fucking the train tracks got me. I survived, but the train tracks got me. God damn it. Sorry, part of my French. Anyways, but yeah, so I mean, the crash was a lot worse this time around. I'll tell you that. 100% guaranteed it was a lot worse. Because again, I was going faster and it was raining, and yeah, it was not good. Right there was going super slow speed compared to what happened before. Anyways, real quick, I want to give a big shout out to Wilfredo Silva with a 49 peso super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. He's like, hope you were doing okay. Bruised pride and all. Yeah, that's right. I mean, if anything, you know, what hurt the most was my ego. But I mean, I was fine. You know what I mean? You know how many times I've tripped and I fall? I'm a clumsy individual. I'm like a bull in a china shop. All right. So this ain't new to me. I'm used to bumbling about. But yeah, long story short, um, yeah, that's what happened to me. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, I crashed out. So going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show before I went to story time, um, those are the real dangers out here. You know what I mean? The real dangers of living in Mexico are things like this. You know, when people tell you, "Hey, don't drive at night," they're not telling you, "Hey, don't drive at night because you know the cartel's out there waiting behind the bush, you know, to rob you, to take your your social security check or whatever it is you got, you know, the 15 pesos that you have in your pocket." No, what they're telling you is that the streets are dark. Many times, depending on where you are, especially if you're in a little, in a rural area, you might not even have any street lights or have any highway lights. So it's just pitch black. Um, on top of that, the roads, again, you've seen that the roads in many of my videos, and as I was explaining to you earlier about my crash, the roads have a lot to be desired. So imagine it's dark outside. There's not enough lighting. You go on ahead and you hit a bump. You hit a speed bump. All right, will send you flying, or you can hit a pothole. We can also send you flying. You can hit an animal. You can hit a person. I mean, a lot of times, you'll see if you're driving around at night, not necessarily so much in the city, but especially when you go out and about outside of the city a bit. And you see people in the middle of the highway, no lights anywhere, and just some random dude on a bicycle with no lights at all, or animals, or whatever it is. Okay, so those are the real dangers. A lot of the real dangers, a lot of the have to do with the roads and the infrastructure and things like that more than anything else. All right. And so the reality is that many times, a lot of you guys, you guys have reported back multiple times that, you're walking down the street, you're walking in its central, right where I'm showing you right there in the video, where you're walking down and all of a sudden you're not paying attention. And, one of the sidewalk might be a little elevated for whatever reason. You trip, you fall, you bust your ass. All right. And then, again, you know how it is. The older you are, the more damage you're going to cause whenever you fall. Again, you can start paying attention to the ground a little bit more in my videos, and you can see it exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you guys that have been out here know exactly what I mean. Again, it's all over Mexico. Many countries have similar situations like that. So when you're coming from the USA or Canada, where most of the roads are taken care of, flat, the sidewalks are or everywhere you're walking is flat and taken care of, and they have all kinds of the handicap ramp and the this and the that. Well, a lot of people in the USA, I don't know if you noticed, but maybe once you're out and about next time, see if you can notice this. But notice that in the USA, a lot of people are walking wherever they are, just walking around, and they're on their phones. So they're walking, we do a little, so they're walking around on their phone, and since they have the confidence that everything is flat and they're not going to trip, that's why they do that. I mean, you've seen it sometimes where they're even at a crosswalk, they don't even look both ways and they're on their phone. But in Mexico, in fact, this is something that a friend of mine told me. A friend of mine was out here a long time ago, years ago, with their family, with their kids and stuff like that. And basically, their daughter, my friend's daughter was saying, I love Mexico because everyone in Mexico is more present. Everyone is paying more attention to their surroundings. People are just constantly paying attention all the time. And, my friend asked his daughter is, probably like 13 years old or something. Like, well, what do you mean by that? And she's like, well, because out here, the roads are so bad, the streets are so bad, everything is so bad that you have to be constantly paying attention to where you're walking and what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to trip and fall. And I was like, huh, I didn't even think about that, but that makes 100% total sense. Out here, most people are a lot more aware of their surroundings. Well, because they have to be. A lot of times when you see me doing my videos and you see me, sometimes I'm walking down the street and I'm walking in the middle of the street. Okay. Sure, I'm doing it to get the better view for the video for you guys. But at the same time, that is the flattest area. The sidewalks are a mess. And, there's a lot more chance for injury walking on the sidewalks, for example, as opposed to walking in the middle of the street. Now, again, I don't recommend you walking down the middle of the street. And if you do, be more careful out there. Because again, other drivers, other people out there. You might get hit by someone on a bicycle, for crying out loud, because you are not paying attention, or they are not paying attention. But the point is that a lot of people out here are a lot more aware. They're more aware of their surroundings. They're more aware of many things. Because again, even if they trip and fall, they got to figure out a way to take care of those injuries. It's not like they're going to sue the state. They're not going to sue the city, for injuries or bodily harm. Yeah, good luck with that. You know what I mean? No, they have to like figure it out. So like, and then on top of that, most people they know, you know what I mean, that obviously, they can go to the hospital and get it treated, for affordable rates. But that's not the point either. It's just the point of like, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get injured. I don't want to, you know. So as I said, most people, out here, they're a lot more aware of their surroundings when they're walking around, when they're on their bicycles, when they're doing their day to day thing. And for us coming from the USA, Canada, that's something that, believe it or not, is not something that we are so aware of. We might be aware of other things, danger, and aware of, people and other situational awareness, but not necessarily simple things like walking, you know, or riding your bike, what have you. So long story short, I mean, that's a very important thing, for a lot of people out there that to consider, the fact that, when you're out here, you have to be a lot more careful, when you're walking, where you're walking, when you're crossing a street, and so on and so forth, because the laws are also different out here. Sure, in many instances, traffic will stop for you so you can cross. There are certain areas that have, special crosswalks, where it forces the cars to stop. Usually they have like an elevated crosswalk that's kind of like a giant speed bump. And so it forces cars to slow down, no matter what, before they get to that speed bump. So obviously, if you're going to be crossing, they're already almost at a complete stop. So, there are ways to kind of like mitigate all the dangers out here when it comes to the roads and the infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it's something that as long as you are paying attention and not acting a fool like me, you should be fine. I mean, I'll be 100% honest with you. The accident that I had on Saturday could have been very easily avoided. Of course accidents happen, of course things happen that are out of our control. Let's not, I don't want to, also just, skip over that. But I mean, come on, I mean, we got to do some self-assessment sometimes. And I know for a fact I was going too fast for the weather conditions. Okay. I definitely braked, too hard. Okay. And I used the wrong brakes. I was not paying attention. I was hanging out with my friends, and I had a few libations, so maybe I wasn't in the right state of mind, you know what I mean, as I was heading home. And long story short, it was basically mostly my fault, okay? But with that being said, at the end of the day, whether it was my fault or not, it could happen, all right? And again, dear God, thank God that it was just an accident that I caused myself per se, with my own behaviors, as opposed to, again, imagine getting hit by a car, or again, it was just randomly, you could be just going down the street and some guy on a bicycle or on a horse, just comes out from the left or the right. That happened to my friend Dave that you just saw right there dancing right there, the big guy. You'll probably see him again. He was actually on his electric bike about a year ago, and he was just minding his own business, and literally a guy on a motorcycle sideswiped him. All right. Him right there in the blue. You see him in the light blue? He got sideswiped on his electric bike by a motorcycle. All right. So it happens. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just random accidents or what have you. But, that's the reality of it. The dangers out here are a lot more to do with just the way society is laid out and set up. and that you have to be a lot more careful. This is not a nanny state, a nanny country, that anytime that anything happens to you, there's something or someone, or to be held accountable. No, most of the time you got to hold yourself accountable, or you got to figure out how you're going to come up with a solution to whatever it is that happened to you. And that's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? So again, one of the major dangers are out here, is the infrastructure. Okay. But I got a little list here of a few things as well we're going to talk about. Before I do, I want to say, give a big shout out to Scott Cooper out there with the $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. It's going to come in very handy. I can buy more band-aids with that.
Bruh.
Appreciate that. Oh, sorry, wrong sound effect. I appreciate both of you guys. We got Scott and Wilfredo, both of you guys coming in strong. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. But anyways, let's talk about other dangers. In fact, perhaps some of you guys in the chat can let me know, what other dangers are out here living in Mexico, living abroad. What dangers have you come across that have affected you or affected someone that you know out here? Again, that most people are not talking about. So, okay, so we already talked about the infrastructure. I told you my whole story of how I crashed out and ate it, like an idiot, on my bike. But now let's talk about other dangers, okay? Some of these dangers have affected me as well. Another danger of Mexico that a lot of people just don't talk about is sugar. Yeah, that's right. I said it is sugar. Again, I don't know if here, you know what? I'm going to see if I can find it right here. Because, yeah, there it is. Okay, look, check this out. This is when I first moved out here. Okay, so, this is about, 6 months into me living out here. Look at that. Okay, look how I looked over there. Okay, I was skinny as hell. It's funny, people used to ask me back then, oh, Jose, because, by the way, I used to weigh 280 pounds. Okay, I'm at like around 200, 211, give or take right now. But still a little overweight. But there, I was definitely under 200 pounds. It's funny because most people have always known me as a big guy, and a lot of people, when I was this skinny, were asking me, "Hey, Jose, so what's your secret? How did you lose so much weight? What did you do?" And I was like, "Oh, it's very easy. It's called starving, hungry, being hungry. Starving to death or whatever. Oh, hold on a second. I skipped over it by mistake. I want to show you real quick so you guys can see exactly what I look like. But yeah, you know what I mean? So that was my diet, not enough calories, being poor. All right, but look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at this. Not the same, all right? We are not the same, all right? I don't know, you probably can't see it there. Hold on, let me see if I can. Look at this. I got a little baby. I got a little baby here. All right. this, no, look, I'll stand up straight, okay? I'm not that fat, okay? But still, I am a lot fatter, all right? I'm not gonna, we're not gonna sit here and pretend like I'm not, all right? Look, I even got some man boobs a little bit back, all right? Look at that, all right? So look. Anyways, long story short, when I first got here, I was in better shape. Again, that's because of a lack of calories, lack of food. That was me just literally getting here 6 months. That was like 6 months into me being here from the USA, after living in Los Angeles and stuff. So, anyways, but after living out here, the good life, meaning I can afford food again. Again, I'm happily married. All right. All these little things, obviously they start affecting you. And so out here, I could finally afford to eat again. And so obviously I was eating. By the way, this is where I locked myself out. That's the balcony. I locked myself out on that balcony. All right. This is again about a year or not even a year into me living there. It was my first Christmas here. All right. And I locked myself out on that balcony like a couple days before Christmas on a weekend. And there was nobody around. I couldn't even scream for help, okay? And I was on the second floor. I didn't know what to do. And the door swung closed behind me because the wind closed it, and I got locked out. And so I had to bust through one of the windows there. Had to bust through in order to get back into my own home, open the door because it was unlocked. I mean, they just locked me out, but I could open it from inside. So, anyways, and when I busted that window and I pulled my hand out, I literally cut my arm open all the way down. I still got like here, there, from there to there, and it was like 7 stitches. Okay, 7 stitches. All right. And yeah, you know what I mean. That was a whole other story. That was another day. But anyways, yeah. Long story short, it was like during Christmas. There was nobody around. Everything was closed. No, nothing was working. It was a Sunday, and I was able to walk to the hospital. Okay, with my opened arm. I wrapped like I made a makeshift tourniquet, and I just walked to the hospital, and they took care of me there for like 100. No, sorry, not $100. $80, I think it was, or less. 50 to $80, give or take, for everything. Everything, stitches, medicine, the whole nine. Anyways, but long story short, as I was saying, what was I saying? Yeah, so one of the major dangers out here is the fact that when you come out here, well, guess what? You're going to be partaking in a lot of the food and the culture that the Mexicans have out here. One of the, main aspects is the food. And sure, a lot of the food is extremely healthy. If all you're doing is eating tacos for the most part, that's actually pretty healthy. All right. It's just protein, a little veg, you got a little corn tortilla, whatever, you're good to go. All right. Really. I mean, if you're just focusing on that, but, anyone that knows Mexico and Mexicans, and it's not just tacos. In fact, it's like, okay, let's say you're going to have pizza. You can't have pizza without Coca-Cola. You can't have a McDonald's without Coca-Cola. So anyways, long story short, a lot of Mexican food, especially tacos and things like that, you can't just have that greasy, taco, which is amazing and delicious. You can't just have it without a Coca-Cola. So long story short, everybody drinks Coca-Cola in Mexico, some parts of Mexico more than others. So you're gonna be drinking Coca-Cola out here all the time. On top of that, the Coca-Cola out here is a lot better. It's just so good, so good. Compared to the Coca-Cola you get back home in the USA, made with like, I don't know, chemicals and corn syrup and all this other stuff. Out here, it's just, I mean, you see the ingredients. It basically says, water, sugar, caramel color, or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know the ingredients, but it's just like that's it. And so it's just so good. And so you're drinking Coca-Cola all the time. I remember when I first moved here, I was not drinking Coca-Cola. I was not drinking soda, no sugary drinks, none of that. So again, why I had that beautiful girlish figure I had there. But I got a different girlish figure. I got my boobs out. But but anyways, but the point is that the Coca-Cola is a main factor to me getting fatter, and you getting fatter, and Mexicans getting fatter or unhealthier. Okay, not just the Coca-Cola. But sugar. I mean, you got to remember that Mexicans, love their pastries. They got their sweet breads. They got so many pastries. Okay, a lot of bread they eat. Depending on the part of Mexico, depends on how much bread and sugar they eat. But long story short, it's part of their diet. It's part of their culture. For many, they'll have a heavy meal earlier in the day, so they'll have their tacos, they'll have their heavy meal like at maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then like nighttime for dinner, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, give or take. Their meal is like a cinnamon roll, okay, with some Coca-Cola, or a cinnamon roll with a glass of milk or hot chocolate or whatever. Or again, not just a cinnamon roll, but you can just imagine, what I mean, by like a sweet bread, like a bread covered in sugar, or a sweets, things like that. So that's a thing too, so and they're so good. And so like a lot of times, you even like lie to yourself, or at least I do, saying, well, I'm eating this bread from the bakery, it's a lot healthier than if I were to get a Twinkie from the 7-Eleven. And sure, yes, it is, but it's still sweet. So look, this guy's on the beach and he's selling sweets. Now granted, this right here isn't really that sweet, and probably has very little calories, but it's just everywhere. Okay, whether you're literally on the beach with nobody around, you're on the street, it doesn't matter. People are consuming sweets and sugar and all kinds of unhealthy things all the time. And it's funny because there's always a running joke with Mexicans where like the joke is like, oh, my tummy doesn't feel so good. But then you see what they eat on a daily basis. He's like, they're eating Doritos, they're eating their tacos with like all the hot sauces. They'll have a beer, but then they'll make it into a michelada, which is like, it's like a Bloody Mary, you know what I mean? Like with every beer. And I could go on and on. And long story short, you know what I mean? As healthy as some might think that Mexicans are, on the other end of the scale, they're not that healthy at all. I mean, they live amazing lives, and they love food and drink, and they really, again, enjoy all that. But with that said, obviously it comes with a detriment. So for a lot of you guys out there, sure, you might have your special diets and you move to Mexico and you can keep that diet out here very easily, since you can buy your meat and your vegetables, basically in little stores like this, little places like that, little stalls that are very similar to what you're looking at there. And a lot of it just comes straight from the farm or what have you. But the reality is that, there's so many more delicious things out there that are just gonna, again, add sugar to your diet that you might not have normally wanted. And so that's another thing too. That's a very, unfortunately, it's a good and it's a bad thing, just depending on how you're looking at it. It's all about moderation, in my estimation, of the way I like to look at it. Just you can consume, bread and sugar and all this other stuff, but again, in moderation, which is could be difficult, for anyone coming to Mexico. Now, another thing, okay, that maybe a lot of people don't talk about is alcohol and drugs, believe it or not, okay? Alcohol and drugs. So again, the legal drinking age out here in Mexico is 18 and above. So, basically, it's not like in the USA where the legal drinking age is 21. So that changes things right off the bat. Obviously out here in Mexico, they have a different relationship when it comes with alcohol and just, daily life. So there's a lot of alcohol flowing everywhere. So whether you want to get your cheap beers, there's cheap beers everywhere. You can get drunk for a few bucks. But there's also drugs. I mean, all kinds of drugs. Okay. And again, everyone is very different out there. Some people like, there's many drugs, okay? Whether you're smoking something, you're taking a pill, whatever it is, it's just the reality of it. It doesn't matter what part of the planet you're on, people got their libations, okay? Most people stick to alcohol, but whether it's tobacco, cigarettes, other, marijuanas, whatever it is, it's out here. And so obviously a lot of people, you know what I mean? They go a little in excess when it comes to that. And look, I'll tell you my story about alcohol. When I was in the USA, I was not a drinker. You guys know, I partake in smoking. That's what I like to do. I smoke, whatever, and this is my thing, And but again, when I first moved to Mexico, oh yeah, when I was in the USA, I never drank. Very rarely would I drink. It was not my thing. It was not something I enjoyed very much. I did when I was younger, obviously late teens, early 20s, you know how it is. We all partake in excess. But long story short, you know what I mean? As I became an adult, it was not something that I enjoyed or partook a lot in. Very rarely would I do so. But when I moved to Mexico, and again, just like the Coca-Cola and the sweets and all that stuff, well, there's alcohol flowing everywhere. And many times you'll get invited over to a house, or you get invited over to a whatever it is, right? And they'll just give you a beer, or people are drinking, or whatever it is. Hey, let's have a toast, whatever. And so, sure, when I first got here, sometimes I'll be like, no, no, it's okay. I won't. I don't need a beer. No, no, it's okay. I'll pass on the shot. But then, after a while, it's like, well, what's wrong with that guy? How come he doesn't drink? How come he doesn't this? On top of that, again, it's just a different vibe out here, different culture. So, long story short, it's a very inviting culture to also have a beer with your neighbor, with your friend, whatever it is. Have maybe a couple beers, have whatever. Anyways, in the 7+ years that I've been here, I now drink alcohol. You know what I mean? Not daily, not on a regular basis, but I drink alcohol. I enjoy drinking alcohol with my friends and my family, when we're at a birthday party, when we're hanging out at the art gallery, when we're doing things, whatever. Again, the other day I was delivering some t-shirts, we're just having some beers, whatever it is, right? And so that's the thing, the reality is that for some people, it's easy to control, alcohol is not my thing. But again, I myself saw how easy every day. And so imagine for some people that really like drinking, that really don't have that under control, how that can get out of control. Okay. And not just drinking, but like I said, other drugs, other things like that. All right. Now, one thing that can exacerbate that, one situation that can make, the drinking and alcohol situation worse is, again, another danger, another thing that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to moving abroad, moving to Mexico per se. Um, and that is loneliness, isolation. Okay. Now, again, my personal story. I mean, are you kidding me? One of the main reasons I moved to Mexico was because I wanted to be isolated. I wanted to be left alone. I wanted to come out here and that's it. If I'm making new friends, I'm making Mexican friends. That's it. You know what I mean? That kind of. So I came out here with a different mentality. I think some of you guys have a similar mentality, but not everybody. I know a lot of you guys, you're just moving to Mexico because you have to move to Mexico. Because again, you don't have many other options out there. And I understand the situation. Everybody is different, especially the older folk. It could be a little bit more different. Now, before I continue on this about loneliness, this really affects a lot of people out there that are just not okay with being alone. Again, I myself, I think a lot of people struggle with this at some point in their life. Not everybody. I know there's introverts out there that love, just being left alone and all that stuff. But for the most part, a lot of people struggle with this, throughout their years. But because of things that happened to me in my life, well, guess what? For many portions of my life, I had no other choice but to be lonely, to be alone, to be isolated, to be, again, just me, myself, and I. And that's it. Figure it out, Jose. Again, this is why I got a fake plastic horse and I'm always talking to this guy. I'm talking to myself here. Anyways, whatever. But the point is that, for me, I was already okay with all that. You know what I mean? That was not something that was affecting me at all. Now, when I moved to Mexico, it was very quickly as to how I was making friends, talking to people. I knew my neighbors. It was just very different how easy and quickly it was for me and for a lot of you guys, to make friends out here and to make new connections and all that other stuff. But for some people, it's not that easy. Now, why was it easier for me? Well, because I speak fluent Spanish. I speak Spanish. So for me, it was very easy to just talk to everybody and make new friends all over the place, especially Mexicans being extremely friendly and nice and curious and all that stuff. So it was very easy. And I talk a lot and the Yucatecans talk a lot. It was easy. It was very easy for me, to get those connections. Okay. But I know for a lot of you guys out there, it's not that easy, especially if you don't speak Spanish. If you don't speak Spanish, how are you going to be connecting, with your neighbors, connecting with other Mexicans, connecting with, the people around you on a daily basis that speak Spanish or mostly Spanish? Well, again, it becomes very difficult. And if you are not okay with being alone, with isolation, with loneliness, and any of this stuff, well, it's going to start affecting you very, very quickly. All right. Again, for me, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. All right. And so this is something I've seen throughout the years since I've been living here. Again, I've been living here over 7 years, so I've seen a lot. And so what I see a lot of times is that, again, a lot of expats, a lot of foreigners, they'll move out here and they have a lot of trouble making friends. And again, think about it. They don't know Spanish. They don't even make too much of an attempt to learn Spanish. Okay. They feel scared. They feel intimidated by, having to interact with other Mexicans or the people around them and all that stuff. So they isolate themselves in their house, in their Airbnb, in their whatever. They don't interact with many people. And then the few times that they go out and interact, they go and interact with other Americans, other Canadians, other expats, other foreigners. So they'll go to a meetup and there's a bunch of like-minded individuals out there. All right. And then, they can try to make friends there. There's a lot of little places, all over the city. Each city is different. Each area is different. But there's all these little places where, expats, foreigners, Americans, Canadians, whatever, they gather. Okay. And they'll gather for different things. They'll gather to do, community work, charity work. They might gather, at the local watering hole. Like out here, there's a place called McCarthy's, I think. Is it McCarthy's? It's like an Irish pub. A lot of Americans, Canadians, they'll gather there, they'll meet up there, they'll hang out there. The Merida English Library is another place. And there's little places here and there all over the place where they gather. Now, again, this all seems great and wonderful, right off, as I'm explaining it to you. But what happens is that a lot of people don't realize this, is that when they go to these places, okay, and they're the new person in town, they're the new person in the place, and they're not a tourist, you're out there looking to move out there or whatever it is. That's when things, get a little difficult, because now all of a sudden you have to make friends with people that you've never met before, that you don't know. Yes, they speak your language. Yes, they might be from your home country, but you guys already know, if it's very difficult for you to make friends in the USA or Canada where you're at right now, well, the same thing happens out here. They're not all the times is everyone very friendly and embracing. I'm talking about other Americans, other Canadians, other whatever. And one thing that a lot of people notice, I notice it, but one thing a lot of people complain about, that's what I meant to say, or talk about, is the fact that, well, when you guys move out here, all of a sudden everyone has like their own little clique. Everyone all of a sudden reverts back to how things were in high school, meaning, you got a little clique of people here, you got your little group of other people over there. These people are, you know what I mean? Like, they don't want, these people over here don't want to mingle with these people, and these people over there have a thing against those people. Sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's, hey, I got here to Mexico before you did. Sometimes it's, the wealth disparity. Some expats have more money than others. I could go on and on. But long story short, when you don't have the ability to make friends or interact with other Mexicans, and the only ability you have is to interact with other Americans or Canadians, and they might not be as friendly as you might have thought originally, oh, that's when things get really dark for a lot of people. Because all of a sudden, you're out here, again, you got no friends. You try to make friends. Nobody wants to be your friend, because everybody's in the little clique. Everybody's in the little thing. It's a popularity contest again. It just goes back to being in high school again. And some people, some people have charisma. Some people can, they're social butterflies. Some people, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Some people are able to just, deal with this, but other people are not. Other people are not, social butterflies. Other people are, not as extroverted, and as you get older, it just becomes more and more difficult. And so think about it. You know what I mean? Like, again, you're out here, and you're trying to make friends, and, you might make friends with David, and then you go out to another bar and you make friends with Johnny, and then you find out that Johnny and David aren't friends, and then you got to choose between who you're going to talk to, because if you talk to both, then you might lose both friends. I mean, it's just little itty bitty things like that, that again, you can just imagine how they multiply. For anyone out there that remembers high school, or remembers, your college days or middle school or whatever, it's very similar to that. And so a lot of people have a lot of trouble with this. All right. And other people, not so much. The ones that have a lot of trouble with this, well, those are the ones that isolate even further, continue to drown their sorrows, with more alcohol, drugs, or whatever. And again, it spirals out of control. And, it doesn't end well. Sometimes they, just ends, or sometimes they move back to their country, or whatever it is. But again, the people that are able to make it out of that funk are the ones that eventually learn to embrace the culture, learn to embrace the people, learn to embrace their neighbors, and learn to embrace, the people that actually are making an effort to want to get to know you, to want to interact with you, and so on and so forth. And that's the thing. If you actually give the Mexican people a chance, you realize very quickly how nice, how friendly, how giving they are, how curious they are, how amazing they are. And at least for me, you know what I mean? I left the USA, and my plan was to isolate. You know what I mean? My plan was like, I don't want to deal with people anymore. But just dealing with Mexicans on a daily basis, when I first moved out here, it renewed my faith in humanity. And long story short, that's why I just, interact with mostly Mexicans in my life out here on a day to day. I'll interact with you guys, but very rarely, we'll bump into each other on the street. But I don't go to meetups. I don't go to like any of these social things. I don't go to any of those things because none of those things interest me. At all, for many reasons. I don't need to make that kind of connection, because I already got my own connection. Whether I got my own connection here because of the YouTube channel and I got my connection with you guys, but I also got my real human connection with Mexicans, in my neighborhood, Christian's family, friends of hers, friends of mine, people that I've met in my travels and then, I've met throughout the years that I've been here, mostly Mexicans. And so for me, it hasn't affected me at all. In fact, it's affected me in the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where, if I'm drinking a little bit more, it's only because I got so many friends now that every time I go visit one or hang out with one, hey, we gotta have a beer, we gotta this, we gotta drink something, smoke something, do something, and which is great, which is wonderful. That's where you want to be at, a healthy relationship, with other humans, and your libations and so on and so forth. Okay. But the reality is that, a lot of people out there, they just don't talk about a lot of the things that I was talking about today, about the real dangers, that a lot of people face when they come out here to Mexico. And that's just the reality of it. You know what I mean? It's not the cartel. You know what I mean? Sure, there are corrupt police officers in certain parts of Mexico that might shake you down for a few bucks. Sure, if you go to certain neighborhoods in certain parts of Mexico, just like if you go to certain neighborhoods in certain parts of the USA, you're probably going to encounter danger. But for the most part, you're not going to encounter danger. You're probably not going to find any danger at all, in the traditional sense, in the sense of what you're used to in the USA. In the USA, when we hear danger, I'm hearing I'm going to get shot. I'm going to get killed. A police officer is going to do horrible things to me. I could go on and on. You guys know the real dangers of life out there, right? As opposed to, what the dangers are out here. And so, like, out here, when a lot of people are just making that connection of like, oh, there's the danger in Mexico, they automatically think that the cops are out here to shoot to kill like they are in the USA, and they're not. Like I said, most cops out here, they barely even do their job to begin with, let alone, bothering you, or let alone shoot you or anything like that. And the same thing goes on, like I said, whether it's a cartel or the bad guys or the bad hombres out there, they don't want that heat on top of you, on top of them, for, bothering any one of us. All right. And again, I'm telling you, it's a completely different scenario out here than it is in the USA. And the dangers out here are more of, just the dangers that, well, we've always encountered throughout our whole lives. You know what I mean? Like I said, you might find, stray dogs in certain neighborhoods. And let's say that you're walking your dog and you don't know how to handle stray dogs. Well, that could be a problem. I remember a long time ago, many years ago, Christian was walking Gizmo and she encountered a stray dog, and it did not end well. You know what I mean? It was a situation. Gizmo got bit, Christian got scratched up, whatever. You know what I mean? But that's why I walk the dogs now. No, I'm sorry. That's why I walk Gizmo now these days, and I'm the one that takes care of, the walking, the dog, because simply put, I know how to handle those dogs. Gizmo, my dog, also knows how to handle those dogs, and so you got to remember, Christian is, she's tiny. She sees, really angry street dog. She's with Gizmo. Gizmo is stronger than her. Gizmo's trying to defend her, and that whole thing, you already know how it cannot end well. But with me, I've encountered, I mean, I've honestly, I swear to God, I've encountered, you know, like a pound of dogs. I remember one time me and Gizmo were walking on a Sunday morning, thinking nobody's out, and we encountered a pack of like 10 dogs, all sizes, all everything. But yet, since I know how to deal with dogs, I got my dog semi-trained, to the point where, he listens and knows how to handle those situations. And I walk around with a big walking stick. You know what I mean? I know how to speak dog per se. It was not a problem. You know what I mean? It's never been a problem. You know what I mean? But that's only because, I know how to handle danger a little better. See, look, boom, I bumped my head up there. So, I'm not always, back to what I'm always telling you guys about. Oh, wait. Oh, man, did I skip it? Uh, Sorry. Uh, where was it? There it is. Here, check it out. I'm telling you, man. You know how many times I've hit my head here in Mexico?
Bruh.
So many times. I think every time I hit my head in Mexico, it just it makes me better. All right. So, anyways, shout out to Mexico and all that. But yeah, long story short, you know what I mean? The dangers out here are not what most people perceive. Um, a lot of it are things that most people never talk about, but they are a real thing. Like I said, you know, whether it's potholes, infrastructure, you know, yeah, you know, when you're biking, driving around, walking around, um, you know, just the fact that there's a lot of sugar, Coca-Cola, you know, alcohol, you know, all kinds of things out there to tempt you to go the wrong way. The loneliness, the isolation, the making friends, you know, all these things are real, you know, believe it or not, they're real dangers and they're real problems that a lot of people have out there that most people just don't talk about because it's not sexy to talk about. It's not like something that most people want to even think about. You know, a lot of people, again, in their heads, you know, they have one idea as to how things are or they're going to be. And then when they get to the place, you know, they're not ready for how things really are. And that's the thing, too. You know, a lot of people have to kind of like take into account. You got to be able to roll with the punches. You got to be able to think on your feet. And you got to be able to, again, be able to deal with life as it comes at you. And you know, for some of you guys out there, it's not a problem at all. It's actually very easy. You know, most of your life, you know, you've lived like that. But for some people out there, man, you know, like I said, they come to Mexico and it's just danger after danger after danger after danger after danger after danger because they just don't know how to deal with just basic things that, you know, they should have learned how to deal with at some point in their life. And it's just, it is what it is. So, all right, guys, think that's enough for now. You know what I mean? I've gone long enough. I've been long-winded enough here on today's episode. I'm gonna read a few comments real quick. But before I read a few comments, before we end the show, I want to let you guys know. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you guys, all the love, all the well wishes, you know, all the everything. You know, I love you guys. You know, you guys are the best. You guys are amazing. Seriously. But again, before I go anywhere, I want to let you guys know that again, guys, for all anyone out there that's curious or interested in moving to Mexico, moving abroad, whatever, and you want more information, free information, okay, on what you need to know, what you need you know, to know on moving to Mexico or what you need, you know, to know of just leaving the country. Again, just a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is just to leave the country, let alone land somewhere else. But anyways, whatever help you need, I probably already did a video on it. I probably talked about it at some point on my channel. So please, you know, right there, right next to the store, you see where it says search, you can type whatever, all right? Let's say residency, and you'll get a bunch of videos on residency, all right, and so on and so forth, all right. So or jobs, you know, some people are like, oh, how do I get a job? You know, job, you know, whatever. So, anyways, long story short, you know, use my YouTube page. Okay, you get all kinds of free information and knowledge on there. Also, go to my website. On my website, I got even more free information, and I actually have a little bit, you know, a little bit more tailor, you know, made information. So, for example, moving to Mexico, general information, and you can find out how to get a rental. You know, the top 20 questions, you know, I get answered. I get asked how to find a job, how to a banking solution if you need an apostle, translating app, you know, again, residency, how to get a job. Look out there, I got all the way at the top, I got digital nomad jobs. Look, I got a full list of jobs, all kinds of things, all for free. Okay. And for anyone out there that, again, wants to help out the show, you guys already know what to do. You know, again, some of you guys have left super chats. Some of you guys, you know, send donations here or there through, you know, Cash App, PayPal, whatever. Or, you know, you can also just buy a T-shirt. You know, I got the store up there. Just click on the store. You got the, you know, T-shirts for to purchase. You know, I was able to finally find a better, you know, resource. You know, to fulfill my merchandise orders. Also, I've been able to bring you guys a lower price because again, I used to sell t-shirts for more expensive, but because I found this new place that has lower prices, well, I'm passing on those savings to you. So again, we got t-shirts. I'm working on more merchandise on the store. I know we got the holiday season right around the corner. I've already gotten a few orders, you know, so shout out to you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And lastly, For anyone out there that wants to talk to me one-on-one and wants to have a personalized consultation, okay, please, again, on my website, you just click on the link right there and it'll show you the instructions on what you need to do in order to get in contact with me for a paid consultation. And that's a way that you can help me out, again, by helping support the show. And I can help you out by answering all of your questions and then some. There's no real time limit. It's just as long as I get all your questions answered. Because again, I can't talk about everything here, and there's certain things that you guys want to ask me or talk about that I can't answer here either. So for that, for those purposes, I have the personalized one-on-one consultations, and for a lot of you guys out there that have don't have the time to sift through my videos, watch my videos, listen to all my crap. Again, the consultations are great because, well, I get to answer your questions within an hour or so, as opposed to you watching hours and hours of my videos. So, again, please, check all that out if it interests you. Also, again, as soon as I'm done here with the live stream, well, guess what? We're going to go live on my other channel. Okay. So again, on my other channel, I do all kinds of fun stuff. It's a little bit more fun than it is here. Again, on this channel, we talk about living in Mexico, life abroad. But on my other channel, well, we talk about all kinds of things, okay? Many things, all right? I usually just do live streams on the channel for now. We're going to be putting more content. But again, I go through story time. I tell you guys things about my personal life. I tell you guys stories about my own, my life as well. We talk about certain topics, all right? Today we're going to be talking about the system is not broken. It was designed this way. All right, so we're going to be talking about that. So hopefully you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, and if you are, I would love to hang out with you guys and chat some more. So I'm going to put the link to that. All right, for anyone out there that's interested. Okay, and I think that's it. Let me see. Okay, so let me read a few comments. Um, what is it? Casticio. Anyways, Cat says, how much cheaper would you say is Valladolid than Merida? I don't know. I mean, I didn't really. When I went to visit Valladolid, I found it just as expensive, maybe more expensive, okay, than I would find than I found Merida. Now, granted, I was only in the touristy areas. I did a video on it. Again, see, look on my, again, just in the search right there, just type Valladolid. All right, and I did a video. All right, see, getting lost in Valladolid. You guys can check that out if you're. Oh, hold on. See, right there, Valladolid. You can check that video out if you're interested. All right. But yeah, I found it. It's just a touristy trap type place. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was okay. It was all right. Nothing to write home about. For me, in my opinion, from all the villages and pueblos and towns and all the little areas I've visited around the Yucatan, I find I've found a bunch of other places that are much better, in my opinion, than Valladolid. I know some people disagree with me. Some people love Valladolid more. Whatever, it's fine. Like I said, me and my friends, everyone, Christian, we just thought it was all right. But when, like I said, in the money, and the things that we did there, again, we were in the touristy area and we were just trying to do touristy stuff. And it seemed to me it was a lot more expensive than Merida, or, again, it was closer in prices to what you're going to find in Cancun and that area over there. So, a bit too overpriced for me. Now, how is the housing and how are other prices and other things? I honestly don't know. I have no clue. But if I were to take a guess, it's probably the same price, similar in price, but I wouldn't say too much cheaper, or not, I wouldn't say it's much cheaper than Merida. If anything, it maybe a little bit, but it's not something you're gonna write home about either. So I don't know. Um, So I don't know. So, that's the thing. So I mean, okay. So you're like, oh, you're more curious as to someone who's looking to live there on $1,000 a month, or a hermit life. By the way, I got to make a video on that soon as well, because as inflation is getting worse, as the U.S. dollar is losing purchasing power, and I could go on and on. That whole idea of like living in Mexico for around $1,000, that is starting to kind of disappear. All right. I don't want to say it's gone entirely because a lot of Mexican households, a lot of Mexicans live still on $1,000 or less a month. But I'm just being honest, you know what I mean? Because I've already seen so many people, that have come from the US and Canada that have only $1,000, but they don't have $1,000, they have $1,000 budget, but they don't have $1,000 mentality. And so, they'll come out here with, a McDonald's budget, but they want to eat at a five-star Michelin restaurant, that kind of thing. So that's a thing too. You know what I mean? Like, I really can't answer that too much per se because I don't know what you're looking for or what your situation is. Because there's a lot of things that are involved when it comes to, cost of living. It's not just, hey, I'm going to pay my rent, I'm going to get something to eat, and we're good to go. There's many things, many things. Whether you got to pay for your immigration, papers, all right, whether you qualify financially or not, you got to take care of that. Whether you have unforeseen situations, like let's say you have a medical emergency. Again, think about it. You're living on $1,000 a month, all right, and you only have what, like $100 left to your name, and you have a medical emergency. Now what? You don't got insurance. You can't just go to a hospital and get taken care of for free. So, yeah, like I said, there's many things that are involved, and I want to make sure that whoever's coming out here, they're as best prepared as possible to deal with everything that they're going to be dealing with when moving out here. But the reality is that it's not as black and white or as easy as it once was when I first moved out here over 7 years ago. And again, a lot of it has to do with the mentality. Again, you guys have seen me from day one. I came out here with nothing. Again, I was on a special diet of not eating food because I was so poor. So for me, it was very different and very easy for me to, land on my feet and continue having a very small budget living out here, but not for everybody. Okay, you got to keep that in. You got to keep that into perspective. Okay, so again, reality checks. That's what that's what this. If anything, what this channel specializes in is reality checks. All right, that's it. All right, I do all kinds of videos. I talk about all kinds of topics, but the reality is that this is the reality check channel. All right, no matter what we're talking about, whether we're talking about digital ID, cashless societies. Hey, I tell you, why am I going to hide about that information? That's very important to me too. But I'm also giving you the reality check as to what life is. I mean, you're looking at what life is like out here right there. That's all over Mexico. How in what world do you see all that being digital? If you're out here and you live out here, you quickly realize it's all bull crap. But a lot of people, they still, they'll read the headline, they'll look at the thing, and they'll freak out, and they don't want to, they want to still live and think, you know what I mean? They still want to be living in that world that they've constructed in their own brain, in their own mind, and they don't want to deal with the reality of what life is out here or what life is outside of the USA. So that's just the reality of it, okay? But yes, that's what this channel specializes in. But I do have to make a new cost of living episode because, well, my cost of living has changed. The cost of living out here has changed. It's not, like where you're gonna hear other people say, "Oh, you need $3,000-$4,000 to live out here." You don't. You don't. Okay, you can still live out here on 1,000 or 1,500, but it's gonna depend on your situation. You know what I mean? If you're young and healthy, yeah, $1,000 a month, that's great. That's wonderful. But if you're an old fart, okay, older than me, and you got health issues, yeah, $1,000 might not cut it. But if you're in the USA and you're about to retire and you can't even afford to live in the car that you're in right now, okay, you can't even afford your medicine, you can't even afford food. Well, yeah, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's probably going to be a lot better for you in Mexico, and you're already dealing with a really difficult situation. So again, it's up to the individual, and it's up to what kind of lifestyle you're leading or looking to lead out there. That really is going to contribute to whether or not you're going to be able to live out here on 1,000 or not, or whatever it is. So, anyways, I think that's it, guys. We're going to wrap this bad boy up. Let me see if there's any more. I think that's it. Any more people in the chat? Any more questions? We got Cassandra saying she went to the market in Mexico and struggled with her beginner Spanish. I purchased a drink and they were asking me how to say things in English, I was blown away. They seemed to be very nice. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing too. It's not like you need to know one, perfect Spanish like me. As long as you know some Spanish, as long as you're willing to try, as long as you're also friendly and nice and welcoming, well, you're going to find out that the Mexicans are as well. And that's when you realize, oh, wait a minute, a lot of Mexicans speak some English. Some speak better English, than others. Some speak better English than me, for crying out loud. That's not the point. The point is that, if you're just going to like the market, okay, that's full of Mexicans, and you're acting like an entitled gringo, speaking English, demanding this, upset with that, upset. Listen, man, that's that's the quickest way to find yourself in danger, okay? Than I can think of. But if all of a sudden you're in that same market, and it doesn't matter whether you're lost or not, look lost or not, whatever, but you're in making the attempt, you're trying it, the Spanish, you're trying to, hey, eat the food, whatever it is, man, you're just there interacting, and they see you, that, you are, trying, to assimilate, or at least embrace the culture, man, everyone is going to be so nice and so awesome and so amazing to you that it's going to blow you away. All right. Anyways, all right. With that said, I got to get out of here. Um, I just noticed that yeah, I've gone a little longer than usual, and I got to get to my other stream on my other channel. So, you already know the deal, guys. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. You guys are so awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you so much for all the love, all the well wishes, all the donations, everything. I appreciate you guys more than you can imagine. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you appreciate the show, and I really hope you appreciate. Sorry, I really hope you enjoy Sunday's video. I got a special little video for you guys on Sunday. We got Halloween right around the corner, so again, that's why I got my pumpkin. You got my mask, my everything. We're celebrating Halloween, as you guys know, in the Day of the Dead and all that stuff. So, hope you guys are ready. Sunday, we're gonna start off, with an awesome video, and next week we should be celebrating here. Next week is Halloween, so next Thursday we should be celebrating and talking about Halloween, Day of the Dead, all that stuff. So it'll be a little celebration day. Got a lot of videos and clips to share with you guys and all that stuff. So really hope to see you guys there, and I hope you have an amazing weekend. Be careful on your bikes out there, and stay safe. Stay awesome. I appreciate you guys, and you already know the deal. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon. But more importantly than anything else, please continue to stay awesome. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.